Some people claim Islamophobia doesn't exist. I've heard one famous YouTube personality known for his attacks on Islam to have said this. He's also said Islam is essentially a fascist religion. Is there prejudice against Muslims? Do people who have little idea about Islam or how Muslim communities function and interact have beliefs about Islam that are unfounded and resistant to rational influence? The answer to those two questions is obvious to me. Have you perhaps in your own life come across people who talk about Muslims as if they were all the same, even though they don't know any Muslims personally? The Runnymede Trust is a leading think tank founded back in the late 1960s. In 1997, they defined Islamophobia as the dread or hatred of Islam, and therefore the fear and dislike of all Muslims. In my view, such a thing as Islamophobia clearly exists, but by no means does it exist exclusively in Europe or the West. Now, are there plenty of legitimate criticisms of Islam and the behaviour of certain Muslims? Yes, there are. And wherever religious bigotry or bigotry of any kind exists, it should be fearlessly confronted. Anyway, Islamophobia, a challenge for all of us, a report by the Runnymede Trust, was launched in November of 1997. In the report, the following 8 closed views are put forward as being equal to Islamophobia. Number 1, Islam is seen as a monolithic block, static and unresponsive to change. 2, it is seen as separate and other. It does not have values in common with other cultures, is not affected by them, and does not influence them. Number 3, it is seen as inferior to the West. It is seen as barbaric, irrational, primitive, and sexist. Number 4, it is seen as violent, aggressive, threatening, supportive of terrorism, and engaging in a clash of civilizations. Number 5, it is seen as a political ideology used for political or military advantage. Number 6, criticisms made of the West by Muslims are rejected out of hand. Number 7, hostility towards Islam is used to justify discriminatory practices towards Muslims and exclusion of Muslims from mainstream society. And finally, number 8, anti-Muslim hostility is seen as natural and normal. Do you think certain quarters of the media, certain newspapers in this country, have been feeding into people's prejudice against Muslims? Fanning the flames of hatred, perhaps? Interesting thing, have you ever noticed how when people from this part of the world or elsewhere want to make an argument about how their way of life is better or superior to life in some other part of the world, they have to appeal to their own culture and traditions? You know, it's strange, isn't it, how everyone thinks that their culture, the culture they belong to, is the best one. Funny, isn't it, that? I was quite surprised a couple of months ago when I was over at my auntie's house with some family, and we were just sitting around talking about the future and different cultures and stuff. And she just came out and said, well, I think the Muslims will eventually take over in this country. Maybe it will take a generation or two to happen, but it will happen, unless the English rise up against them. Her saying this took me quite off guard at the time. I was thinking, whoa, where did that come from? Now, my auntie doesn't have any Muslim friends, and as far as I know, she doesn't have any interaction with any Muslims in her community. Thinking about it though, I suspect that views like the one she expressed are quite common in a lot of cities, towns and villages up and down the United Kingdom. The view that they, the others, the ones who are not like us, the ones who are breeding faster than we are one day gonna take over and destroy the democracy that exists here and create an Islamic state. Because, of course, it's common knowledge that all Muslims hate democracy. I mean, just look at Turkey or Indonesia or some other democracy with a majority of Muslims in the country. I went to college with a lot of Muslims of Pakistani descent. I personally got on fine with most of them. Most of them were good kids. There were a few arseholes, but, you know, that's to be expected, isn't it? You know, humans are humans. In my adult life, I only have one Muslim friend, a Gambian bloke I work with. He is the most friendly, approachable person you could ever hope to meet. A genuinely lovely guy. You can't tar everyone with the same brush, as the saying goes, and you can't judge everyone as being exactly the same just because they follow the same religion. Not all Christians are the same, not all Jews are the same, not all Hindus are the same, not all Muslims are the same. People are individuals. You know, like everyone else, there are biases and irrational thoughts knocking about in my head, but I do my best to treat people fairly and treat them as individuals. It's not always easy, but, you know, it's worth making the effort. I feel like I should say I do have a lot of problems with organised religion and the way religions make people behave, but, you know, I'll always try to keep an open mind. Yeah. Anyway, if you think there's no such thing as Islamophobia, if you think it's just a word made up by the liberal left for one reason or another, feel free to respond to this video. Or, if you're a Muslim and you feel you've been treated unfairly because you're a Muslim, feel free to use the comments section also. Make your voice heard, you know, tell your story. Anyway, catch you later, folks.